Welcome to Dungeon Master Helper, a productivity application for Dungeons and Dragons. I am Michael Blah, I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, 4 years from 2000 to 2004.
I am John Lozier, I'm a U.S. Army veteran, 9.5 years.
Jordan West, U.S. Navy, submarines, nuclear mechanic, got out in 2016. All right, so this was my project idea. These guys got looped into it, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dungeons and Dragons, which everyone's really interested in, I'm sure. So before we get started, the agenda for today, what is D&D? Dungeons and Dragons, you can see it here. What's the problem? What technologies do we use? Setting up a user experience, experiencing the user experience, stretch goals we had, there were a few, and some challenges we kind of encountered, and then questions you may have. So obviously the question on everybody's mind when they woke up this morning, what is Dungeons and Dragons or D&D? It is a tabletop fantasy role-playing game. If you ever watched Stranger Things, very popular show, it's on that. Players will sit together in a table with a dungeon master who's facilitating the entire game. Players will act out a story that kind of evolves as they play. They're the actors, they're the players, they're every bit of it. Think like Frodo and Gandalf and all your favorites that you all definitely watched that movie, haven't you? And then the DM is kind of facilitating everything. He's like the author. He's kind of like the overseer of everything. He facilitates, he keeps the rules, and just makes sure it's a fun game for everybody else. But there are problems with this, as many of you know. I'm sorry. DMs need a lot of tools to make the game work. There's a lot, and you can kind of see from this page, this guy's really got his stuff together, actually. This is way more organized than I am. You've got a lot of notebooks out, you've got a lot of printouts, you've got dice, you've got pens, you've got minis. There's a lot to keep track of. It's very easy to get lost. People are watching you, asking what happens next. They're flipping through pages, flipping through web pages, trying to, make it immersive. It's difficult. And as I kind of talked about, reference websites, wikis, calculators. It's a lot to keep track of, and this could make it a lot more fun. Maybe a lot more people would play. But again, I'm pretty experienced in it, and a lot of you don't seem like you are, so I'm going to have John Lozier explain this to you in layman's terms, because he has yet to play a game of Dungeons & Dragons and help me build this. So give it away to you, John.
Thank you. Let me caveat that with I started playing a game, and it finished before we got the full experience. But yes, I have enjoyed learning a new thing, which I feel like is a real-world development experience. So there's a great likelihood I'll go somewhere and have to develop around an idea or an activity that I've never had experience with before. So I found this very enriching. So one thing that got me a little bit confused as we were working together was terms. So what are we actually talking about? So you're going to hear us talk about a story, and easily defined, that's a body of fiction. It's like the plot that all the separate players and the characters they play, that's where they play. For example, in the Lord of the Rings series, The Hobbit would be a story. Okay, players, those are real people. That's Mike next to me, who's a barbarian. Jordan next to me, who's a wizard. Okay, I might be a goblin. We're players. Non-player characters, also known as the NPCs. That's any friend or foe who's not an actual human being, and we can do whatever we want to them. We can be nice to them, we can be mean to them, but they don't exist in reality. Table. Now this is really where things got confusing when we were working with models and databases. Anyway, table in the context of Dungeons and Dragons, that includes all of the following. First, you have the fictional world that these stories exist in. So the Lord of the Rings series happens in Middle-earth. You also have the real people that play, the players who I've talked about already, and you have the physical space where you're playing, the wooden table in the basement, etc. And now I am going to hand it off to Michael, who's going to dig into the technology and help us get started with the user experience.
All right, so for our backend, we use Django, and we use Postgres for our database. React.js for our front end, which incorporates JavaScript and JSX. And then for our styling was entirely CSS. We're going to go ahead and look at our app. starts out with our festive login page. And you'll see two buttons, login and sign up. For a new player, you would click sign up, and it would switch over. You will see that the login now changes to a register button. And if you made a mistake and you're like, wait a minute, I'm an experienced user, I've been using this before, I can click back to login. You'll see the button changes login. But I'm a new user right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click sign up. I'm going to put in my unique username and my password. I'm going to click register. And brings you to the table list. Now I'm a new user, I don't have any tables. So right now what I got to do is I got to go up to the top right there and click create tables. I'm going to start with my name of the table, which I'm going to call Warriors Quest. I'm going to put in the next input my story. And then I'm going to have some notes. It's Thursday at 8 p.m. the game is. Come on, 8 p.m. Hurry up. There you go. All right, then hit submit. Now we have our table there. Go ahead and click the table. We'll go to our table detail page, which you'll see the story, the notes, and you'll see that we have players and non-player characters. But I just realized I made a mistake. I don't want to call it Warrior Quest. You go over edit table. It's going to bring it back, change Warrior to Dragon Quest. Go ahead and submit. See it'll change over, so everything's pretty editable. Now I'm going to put a player. The player that we're going to be that's playing this game likes to be called John Youngblood, and he likes to carry a sword last time. We're going to go ahead and hit the submit button. You'll see it be added. But then all of a sudden I realize, oh, wait, John Youngblood sent me a text. I don't just have a sword, so I click it and go to edit. He has what he likes to call the Sword of Crystal. Go ahead and hit submit. You see it goes back to that detail page, so that it's updated. I go back to the table, go to non-player character. I'm going to add John Youngblood loves to fight dragons. I'm going to make an invisible dragon. I won't make this different. Put that in. We also got HP, armor, class, and details. So HP is going to be 100, armor class 10, and details can't be found. It's an invisible dragon. Go ahead and hit submit. Go ahead and see it updated. And realize, wait a minute, that's an easy dragon. Let me go back there and change the health. Good. You can see the description. You can click edit. Go back. Let's change that HP to 404. Go ahead and hit submit. Go ahead and see if the details has changed. I go ahead back. Now I have my story, notes, my player, my non-player characters. I have everything ready for Thursday at 8 p.m. for jumping. Go ahead and log out. Now it's Thursday. Go ahead and put in my name, my password. I'm going to hit login this time because I'm not now a new user. And you can see that I have the table and everything saved. So I got my players, my non-player characters, story, notes, and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to log out and hand over to Jordan for an experienced user.
All right, long-time user. I'm going to put in my data and show you what my table would look like. So go ahead, standard password, name. That's my boat name. And here we are. Here's all our tables. And I've got a few, and we don't really use them all anymore. This one's pretty useless. So we'll go ahead and click on it. You can see there's no need for this. Nobody wants it. Delete. Great. Now we've got good tables. We'll go ahead and play Robots and Pirates. You seem like the kind of crowd that wants to. So here's my story. It's got everything. Getting a little, a little too much here. This player, in fact, doesn't even play with us anymore. Doesn't like us anymore. So we'll click on him and we'll delete him. We don't need to play with him anymore. See there? Awesome. Yep. Great. We do the same thing with non-player characters. These people have been playing for a long time. Chickens is not something they're going to be fighting anymore. Clear that out. There, all clean. So now we're in the game, and a player says, hey, I'm going to use Fireball. It does 1,000 damage, and that seems suspect. So I'm going to check my handy dandy spell search drop down. Type in the word fire. I'm not even sure if it's a real spell he just said. It will pull down every spell with the word fire in it, which is great. Go ahead and click on it. It should expand out, give me all the details for Fireball. I can say that does indeed not do 1,000 damage. You're a liar. And the spell search stays open for me. I can close it, get it out of the way. The data persists. I can open it back up if I want to use it again. Easy peasy. We're off to the races now. We can play the game. I'm organizing everything. It's easy. So we'll log out, and I think I am going to talk next about stretch goals, because we had a few. number one, real easy to input. Didn't have a lot of time to get it done. Was a dice roller tool. There are, this is a D20 you see in front of you. There are 20 sides. There's also a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, and a D12 slot to keep track of. It'd be nice to have something nice and easy to plug in. We just didn't get to it. A spell search expansion. As you see, we can search all the spells. There's a lot more. There's monsters. There's creatures. There's the same thing. Sorry. Tools, all kinds of things. We just have to go back in and parse through that data. There's a ton of it out there. It took a while to get the spell search to be something viewable by a user. It's just a matter of time, but we could definitely go back and get that done. Lastly, and probably the biggest feature we wanted to input was a combat tracker. So if you were in a fight, you'd want to see all the players playing. You would want to see all the things you're fighting, and you'd want to keep track of the turns. It's a big administrative burden for the dungeon master. We could definitely make that a lot easier. The bones are laid. We got the info we need. We just need to build the page. But again, about a week is not a lot of time to work with a team for the first time and put something together. So we didn't quite get to that. We're going straight into challenges. I'm going to talk about one and then pass it on to the other guys. So as I mentioned earlier, I was the PM for this, and that put me in charge of planning and project management. We used Pivotal Tracker to kind of line out all our stories, and it became very prevalent, or very obvious that I didn't do a very good job. Just putting down what needed to get done, put in some basics like, I'll make this component. It made it very obvious to me why PM is an actual complete job. It's all you do, writing out the acceptance criteria, writing out the description of what you want so that somebody who wasn't there when you wrote it, it's very important. Many times we go back to okay, so we're going to do this, right? And everyone's not on board with it. I wrote it down, but that was an obvious thing, and we definitely improved on that as we went. And when I start the next one, we'll do a lot better job with that. But communication obviously was an issue. I'll give it to Michael to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Thanks, Jordan. All right, so communication was a challenge. First off, when we started this group project, we've only just got off working our first personal project, which was also in a small time frame. And these guys are awesome. They're very passionate. We really wanted to put forward the best product we could. So about day 2, we were kind of going headstrong in certain functions and components and everything that we developed. And we kind of started stepping on each other's toes just a little bit. So we created a little debt. So thankfully, Granger provided, they headed a, help me out here again. Why am I everybody? Retro. Thank you. Sorry. So we did a retro. We sat down and talked. And then we kind of evolved this highway, this triangle highway between the 3 of us of communicating constantly. So we were constantly up to date on what we were doing, where we were at, what we were touching. And it kind of really helped out just take away that debt and all that issues. And we were all pretty much in sync after that. And that was just a great turnaround. I'm going to hand it off to John to talk about Git.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. So it seems like there's a theme of Git among the projects, and it's awesome. It was a great learning challenge for us. We, like Michael said, we finally came to a way that the 3 of us, a small group, could communicate about the challenges we were faced with. So with Git, new learning curve for us, setting up individual branches while also initiating your own project is a new thing. And we realized, hey, there's a time crunch. Expediency is a must. And so we adopted trunk-based development, which Granger coached us on how to do that properly. Not saying we perfectly executed the new stuff we were learning, but man, it was great to, make a pull request, communicate, make a push, communicate, merge. If there were conflicts, we communicated. It felt very dynamic, felt very good. We grew closer because of the experience. So though Git is a challenge, it ended up being a treasure for us. So this is everything we've talked about. I just want to thank you all for your time and attention. Can't be grateful enough for everything you've all done for us. So thank you very much. Is there any questions? Three questions.
Yeah. I know you guys didn't have enough time to get to certain points, and I understand that. Would you walk me through like say events were happening throughout the game? Would the DM be entering all these updates to events, or would it be like a more versatile system where you would have players input things and whatnot?
No, the intent for this is just the dungeon master to keep keeping track of his stuff. If you do look at we can go back and check it. The player models are a lot simpler than the non-player character models. The intent is that the players keep track of their stuff. We don't really worry about them. If they're alive and breathing, they're good. We have way too much to keep track of on our end. So it would be just a single user application. There's so many applications out there right now that work really well for a user and only a few really structured towards dungeon masters. And I don't like any of them, so that's why I want to build my own. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes.
So you mentioned under the technologies that it said you're using like a key to actually pull the data for your spell search. Was that web scraping? Was that like an API behind the scenes? What's a little more detail on that?
That is and I should have wrote the exact name down because it's like Dungeons, Wizards of the Sword Coast, this long thing. It's not very well put together, but it's just an open source API that has everything in it, and it's just giant objects of information that have to be parsed through. They're completely unusable to somebody who doesn't know how to code. So that was kind of the challenge with that, and why there's only proof of concept spell search, because it would have taken a lot more time to get everything in there, but that is a definite want to do.
One more question.
Have to have one more question. Nobody can get up. Yes.
Can you talk to me about just, it seems like you have a lot of data. Talk to me about like your database, how you thought about designing that and design process.
Can you cover that, or you want
Sure. I'll take a whack at that. Jordan and I worked on the back end mostly, and that was it being a new player to the game Dungeons & Dragons. The models were a great way. Working with Django models is a great way for me to understand the game. So I feel like the question we had before from Ryan about, hey, players and NPCs, what Jordan was describing, I think the OOP concept of inheritance kind of fits well with why players handle their own stuff, right? So the table inherits the player, and all the attributes of the player belong to the player. All we do is say, hey, player, you showed up to the table. Thanks. You take care of your own stuff. And so I feel like the back-end experience, really understanding the game was crucial to figuring out how all the data relates to each other. So users belong to tables, players and NPCs also belong to the table. And it kept things very, very straightforward. So though it seems kind of convoluted, the relationships were really easy to manage and keep track of in our head as long as we understood the dynamics of the game. I think the real difficulty where the volume of data came in is with what Jordan worked on, and he did a great job with the search bar and pulling from the API. That's where the real volume is. So I don't know if you want to speak to that at all anymore. Or do you have any more questions about that, Michael? Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, everybody.